Hey, in this video I want to talk about writing tests. When I first started out, I didn't know what tests were, and when I knew, I didn't know how to actually do it in practice. So in this video I want to talk about why I think you should write tests to improve your learning, and I will show you how you can write your own test by using the tool called Jest. So when I began looking at tests, I was like, it's already hard enough, why make it even harder by writing more programs? And you're totally right. But what matters is how quickly you can learn from those mistakes that you're making. When you write a program, you generally know what it should do. And to be sure you made it correctly, you test it yourself. But what if you made a little change? How do you know it still works? You generally test it again, and all this takes time away from writing new stuff and learning other things. So by writing tests, you save time by not having to test it manually, and you can also more confidently add more advanced features later without having something breaking without you noticing. So in this first example, I will show you how you can set up your project to have tests. Okay, we are now here in an empty folder, and let's create our first program. Let's create our source folder, and inside let's create a program that basically giving a name returns a string that says hello name. So let's call that just hello.js, and let's write a function in here that says hello, and it takes a name and returns hello plus the name. So this is pretty simple, and we should also remember to export this function, so when you require it, you can get this function. So exports dot hello equal hello. So this is our function, and we want to test this. The first thing we need is an npm package.json. So we can get a boilerplate of that by writing npm init and then giving the -j or y for yes. So, and we want to use the program that's called Jest to test this hello function. So let's install that, say npm install Jest. So while it's doing that, we can make our first test, and the way we will write our first test is by writing a new file called hello, and the interesting part is the name. Basically, we need to write test.js after, and it needs to be inside our source folder. And the reason why we need to say hello.test.js is because Jest will ultimately look for all files that has this .test inside. So let's write that first. Jest basically has two functions that you should care about. It has two. It's called the test function, and then it has the expect function. So the first thing we need is, for example, to test that there is such a function as hello. So let's say should be defined. And the second argument to the test function is a function that will be executed, and inside here we are going to use the expect function and say expect hello to be defined. And these functions you can see in the Jest documentation, but this is one of the pretty basic ones. So this is our first test, and to run this function or our test here, we should put it in the npm test scripts. So we basically replace this with the command jest, and let's try it out here in our command line. So clear to clear the terminal, and then say npm test. So you can see it found our hello.test.js and executed it, and you can see the first error is actually hello was not defined. And we can go and fix that by going into our hello.test.js and then importing it at the top. So we will basically say const and then getting it the hello function, because this is a named export, and then say require and say .hello. And we can try to run our function again, and we can see that it was successful. So the hello function was defined. The next thing we should really test is what's the output of the hello function. So we can say test given Kevin as name, and we can write the same thing, so expect, and here we will basically execute the hello function, so hello Kevin, and then the next function you will know is like to be, and that's because we expect hello Kevin to be hello Kevin. So let's try to execute that and see if it is successful. And you can now see we basically have 2 successful tests running. That was a really nice example, but what if you have a function that doesn't necessarily return something, that maybe touches the DOM and changes some text? This is also really easy with Jest, because every time it virtualizes the test environment, which means that you can be sure that nothing gets in and changes while you're running the test. So let's look at an example of how you will write a test that basically changes some text. In this example, we have the hello DOM function, and on the first line it creates a div, the second line it says that inner text, and on the third line it says document body append child. And this is the line that we really want to test. We really want to test that it always calls the document body append child, so we're sure that it works this way. So we go in our test that we already created, and to test this example we need to be sure that it always calls the append child. And with Jest you do that, you create a mock function. And to do that we first have to create it, so we say append child, and then what Jest is called jest.fn. So what we do next is say document body append child, and then we give our own function instead of the native one. Then inside our test we execute the hello DOM like in the previous test, and then we say expect append child, and then that has a property called mock. It has another property called calls, and then we can take the length of that to be sure that it had been called exactly one time. So let's run this, and we can say npm test over here again, and we can see that it was actually successful. And we can also do a quick test to say would it have been called 2 times, and it should likely fail. These 2 examples should give you a pretty good idea how to get started. It can be a little bit difficult to get started, but once you become used to it, it becomes a lot easier to think this way. I will cover more examples and more advanced use cases in upcoming videos, so remember to subscribe. I hope you like this video. See you next time.